The Denver Broncos have gotten off to one of the strongest starts in the NFL this season, as they currently sit 3-0 and are tied for first in the AFC West division, which is one of the hardest divisions of football, which nobody expected coming into the season. In this video, we're going to discuss that the Broncos can keep up the same level of play as we've seen in the first 3 weeks through the entire season. Now let's get into the video. The Denver Broncos are 3-0, and we have to take that with a grain of salt, unfortunately. And it's not because of anything that they did. It's not their fault at all. It's because they unfortunately got an NFL schedule that put 3 of the worst teams in the NFL in the first 3 weeks of their schedule. As they faced the Giants week 1, beat them 27-13. They faced the Jaguars in week 2 and beat them 23-13. And this past weekend, they faced the New York Jets and shut them out 26-0. The Broncos have looked really strong in all 3 of these games, and that is something that we should definitely consider as we talk about the Broncos in general. But they have the 32nd. They have a ranked schedule of 32nd through the first 3 weeks of the season. But that's not their fault. They really can't do anything. And to be a good team, you need to beat the teams that you're supposed to beat. That's a famous quote. I don't remember who it came from, but you need to beat the teams who you're supposed to beat. And the Broncos have been able to do that through 3 weeks. They should have beat the Giants. They beat the Giants. They should have beat the Jaguars. They beat the Jaguars. Should have beat the Jets. They absolutely curb stomped the Jets this past weekend. Now, as the Broncos progress further into the season, we're going to have to wonder what team they are. They've kind of established their identity. They're going to establish the run. They're going to be able to fight for yardage. They're going to have Teddy Bridgewater, who's a very reliable quarterback. He doesn't really make mistakes. He's one of the most accurate throwers in the league. They're a very good team. They really are. They've looked like a great team. I think they've exceeded everybody's expectations through 3 weeks. But let's just look at the next 4 weeks for them, for example. Next week, they go up against the Ravens at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, or Daylight Time. I don't know what we're actually in. But they play the Ravens. That's going to be a very tough matchup. It is at home for the Broncos. The Broncos have one of the best home field advantages just because they have the thinner air there, Mile High Stadium. They always have a little bit of an advantage over the rest of the NFL when they come to them. I don't think it's that much because it's not like those players are all from the Denver area. They've all been drafted there or signed in free agency. It's not like they've lived there their entire lives. So I don't think it's as big of an issue as people make it out to be. However, the Ravens have looked really strong this season. They had the 1 week where people were kind of questioning them because they obviously had the loss to the Raiders in week 1. The Raiders still 3 weeks later are undefeated, so I don't know if we could really say it was that big of an upset anymore. So you got the Ravens. It's going to be a tough opponent next week. The week after, they face the Steelers, who have been very up and down. They beat the Bills week 1. That was huge. Everyone was like, oh my gosh, the Steelers look great. Some people were like, oh, the Bills just played that badly. It was really who you talk to. Steelers haven't looked great since week 1, to be honest. They lost to the Raiders last week. It's funny how the Raiders always come back to this, but they are in the same division as the Broncos, so they always have common opponents. So the Steelers beat the Broncos, or lost to the Raiders last week. And the Steelers looked terrible this past weekend. So that will be a game where we don't really know. But Mike Tomlin's a great coach, I think. He's going to always have his team, playing hard, playing correctly. They don't make that many mistakes, usually under Mike Tomlin. So I think that will be a tough game regardless. Then October 17th, they face the Raiders. It will be their first division opponent. And this is where I think we really have to take a look at how the future of the Broncos season is going to go. They don't play their first division game until October 17th. They don't play their second division game until November 28th, which means the last few weeks of their season are basically all division games. I mean, the last 3 weeks of their season are against the Raiders, the Chargers, and the Chiefs. Those are all 3 division games. And unfortunately for the Broncos, which is something they can't control, is that they happen to be in one of the hardest divisions of football right now. You have the Las Vegas Raiders, who always look great in the beginning of the season under John Gruden. It's happened every year since John Gruden got there for his second time. So we have to take them with a little bit of or take everything they've done with a grain of salt as well. But right now, we have to talk in the present time because we're in the present time. The Raiders look really good. Derek Carr has looked fantastic. Darren Waller is putting himself maybe as the best tight end He's looked better than I think Greg Kittle and Travis Kelce these first 3 weeks. So Darren Waller, stud. The defense, Max Crosby has taken leaps, and he looks great. The entire Raiders team has just played so much better this season. So and they're sitting undefeated as well, just like the Broncos. And then you have the Los Angeles Chargers, who have a new coach this year. Justin Herbert's in his second year now, so obviously we're expecting him to take more leaps in his progression. And he has so far through 3 weeks. They're 2-1. They unfortunately lost to the Cowboys in week 2, but that was a hard fought game. The Cowboys have looked great so far this season as well. They've played well against all their opponents. And then the Chargers beat the Chiefs, the other team in this division. So you have the Chiefs, the Chargers, and the Raiders. That's a really, really tough division for the Broncos, and they're going to have to play 6 games in total against those 3 teams. And I'm not saying the Broncos can't beat them, but I definitely think those teams are either more talented than them or better coaching for those teams. It really depends on which team you're talking about. And we're going to take a look at the Broncos' future schedule, talk about what they could win, easy games they have left, tough games they have left. I don't care what team you are. I feel like every division game is a little bit closer because that's a division rival. You know that team, you know their players very well. You see them twice a season. It's much different. So that's why I don't think the 6 games are that important, or not. They're extremely important. I'm sorry. I don't know if they're as lopsided as people may think they are. Like when the Chiefs play the Broncos, they see each other every year. The Broncos see Patrick Mahomes just as much as the other 2 teams in the division, and those 3 teams in general see Patrick Mahomes more than any other teams in the NFL have. So I'm sure Vic Fangio has dialed up something where he thinks he could slow down that offense, which hasn't looked great so far. Patrick Mahomes has gotten off to a rocky start. I obviously don't think he'll stay that way. I think quarterbacks go through some slumps throughout the season. Patrick Mahomes this season just happens to come in the beginning of the year, and you'd rather have it come in the beginning of the year than at the end of the year. And that Chiefs team has a lot of changes to the offensive line, and the offensive line is very important in the NFL. It's just very undervalued. They have great players on their offensive line, I think, right now, but you have to worry about them gelling together, and that takes a little bit of time. So I think they'll be fine towards the end of the season, similar to how the Buccaneers, looked towards the end of last season, or last season in general. They got off to a really rocky start, brand new offense with Tom Brady obviously in there, and despite having great players, they got off to a slow start. I think the Chiefs, even though being basically the same players at the skill positions, they have a new offensive line, so that's going to take some time. I think that's why they got off to such a rough start. So the Chiefs are a hard team. The Chargers are an up-and-coming team, just like the Raiders have seemed to be, even though the Raiders are a little bit older. They seem to be taking giant leaps in their direction as an organization in general. Now let's go through the Broncos schedule here. Like I said, we have the Ravens October 3rd. I think that's going to be a really tough game for them. I think the Broncos can win it just because it's at home. The fans are going to be crazy because they're 3-0 right now. So tough game. I'm not going to say if I think they're wins or losses. I think it's too early to tell for, January 9th when they play the Chiefs. I don't know what teams are going to be looking at. So I'm just going to say I think if it's going to be a tough game or not. Then they go Broncos at Steelers. I think that's going to be a tough game. Pittsburgh hasn't won at home yet this season. They're 0-2 at home, 1-0 on the road. But like I said, I think Mike Tomlin's a great coach. He'll have that team going. Division opponent at Broncos, Raiders at Broncos. That's going to be a tough game, division game, just like I said earlier. The Browns they face on October 21st at Cleveland. I think that's going to be a very hard game. I think the Browns have been a laughingstock for the last 10 years. Obviously, now they have a ton of talent, and people are always like, the Browns are the Browns, just like Juju Smith-Schuster. This Browns team is not the normal Browns, let's be honest. They have a ton of talent. They have a great coaching staff. Baker Mayfield has looked great. They have a great running game with the 2-headed monster that they have there, Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. So that's going to be a really tough game for the Broncos in Cleveland. Here's a game that I think is going to be easily winnable for them is the Washington football team, October 31st. I don't know if Ryan Fitzpatrick will be back at this point. Like I said, this is what's hard about picking winners. That's why I'm not going to be doing it. But overall, the Washington football team has a great defense, but their offense has really struggled with Taylor Heineke. And even with Ryan Fitzpatrick in the beginning of the week 1, they didn't look that great. I mean, he was only in there for a few plays, though. But I think that's an easily winnable game for the Broncos. And then you have Broncos at Cowboys, and like I talked about earlier, the Cowboys have looked great this season. They've had three really tough games and winning two of the three of them and only falling to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So I feel like that's going to be a tough game, especially with it being in Dallas. We saw it last night with the Cowboys playing against the Eagles. That stadium was loud like they always are. They love their Cowboys. They love Dak Prescott. They love Zeke. So that will be a tough game. Then you got Eagles at Broncos. I think the Eagles got overhyped because of 1 week, to be honest. I don't think they're that great of a team. I think they can be. They're a very young team. They need a lot of development to happen. I mean, Jalen Hurts is only in his second year. Devontae Smith has been pretty good in this rookie year, but he's going to need time to grow to, truly develop into a number one receiver like they need. Then they don't have this will be their second division game, November 28th. That's so late. Just like I said, all their division games are towards the end of the year, which is going to be really rough. These are the games that are really going to matter for playoffs and stuff if it has to come down to it. Chargers, Broncos, like I said, division game going to be hard. Then they go Broncos, Chiefs. Division game is going to be hard. Lions, Broncos, that should be a winnable game for the Broncos. I think the Broncos are a much more talented team. The Lions, through 3 weeks, actually have looked better than I expected, but, I mean, they're really in a rebuild right now. Whether they stick with Jared Goff or not doesn't really matter. They're in a rebuilding team. There's a lot of holes in that team. They play hard. Well-coached team, I would say, actually. I think people are surprised with that. Then they go play the Bengals at home. I think that's going to be a hard game I think that will be a hard game. However, I think that should be a winnable game for the Broncos. I think all these games could be winnable for them, to be honest, with how they've played. 3-0, like I said, they haven't played against great opponents, but you got to give them the benefit of the doubt. They didn't pick their schedule. They beat the teams they needed to beat. That's what you want good teams to do. So the Bengals, I think they have a lot of holes. The up-and-coming team, obviously, with Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. They've looked great throughout the first few weeks of the season as a duo together again. And then the last 3 games is Broncos, Raiders, Broncos, Chargers, Broncos, Chiefs. Only one of those games are at home, so that's going to be a rough way to end the season for them, I think. It's going to be tough. Let's be honest. This team has always been strong ever since Peyton Manning left on defense. It's always been the offense that's been a question, and to be honest, it's been the quarterback position specifically. Teddy Bridgewater, he's had an interesting career in the NFL. I feel like he always gets thrown to the wolves for no apparent reason. I feel like he's never been the problem on any of the teams he's been on yet. For some reason, he's the one that keeps getting, driven out of all of his teams he's been on. He started on the Minnesota Vikings, had a ton of injuries. Not really a ton of injuries. A few injuries that were a little bit scary. They decided to move on when they get Kirk Cousins. He ends up signing or getting traded to the Jets right after they drafted Sam Darnold. So he was going to be like a veteran presence there for them. But they had Josh McCown, and obviously Teddy Bridgewater was playing really well for the Jets in the preseason. So the Saints actually made the Jets an offer. Teddy Bridgewater ends up going to the Saints. He actually looks unreal with the Saints. He was just signed to be a backup and maybe the heir to Drew Brees. That's what they were hoping for, but Drew Brees ends up getting hurt, and Teddy Bridgewater has to step in a few games during his Saints tenure, and he goes undefeated as a Saints starting quarterback, which is just unreal. Obviously, that's going to earn you a contract somewhere when you go undefeated as a starter in the NFL. He ends up getting signed to the Panthers, and they lose their best player in CMC, and I kind of think the Panthers' offense has developed all around Christian McCaffrey, and when he got hurt last year, that Panthers offense really stalled out because I think Joe Brady really counted on Christian McCaffrey being there every single game, and then just were never able to be a productive offense after he left. And in general, the Panthers just weren't a good team last year. And then the surprising trade of Sam Darnold, who Teddy Bridgewater was with the Jets. Sam Darnold comes and pretty much kicks him off another team, and the Panthers trade Teddy Bridgewater to the Broncos. So I think a lot of people going into the season weren't really sure what to expect from Teddy Bridgewater. But through 3 weeks, he's proven just to be as good of a quarterback as he was with the Saints. He's an accurate quarterback. He's not going to make the crazy throws that you see Aaron Rodgers or Patrick Mahomes making. He's a good, efficient quarterback, doesn't really make mistakes, and a very accurate passer. Broncos know how to use that kind of quarterback because, let's be honest, that was the kind of quarterback Peyton Manning was, and I know it's a different coaching staff. The organization in general is completely different. But you have a quarterback like Teddy Bridgewater, it's pretty easy to design an offense. You establish the run, and you put your quarterback in situations where he doesn't need to make a big play. He just needs to make the right play, and Teddy Bridgewater's thriving in that offense right now. So I think that's what the Broncos have going for them right now. I think it's going to be a tough season for them. Are they title contenders for the Super Bowl? I do not believe so. However, I think they can make a push for the playoffs. The division they are in is very tough. It's going to come down to how those division games go. But overall, the Broncos have looked good this season. I'm rooting for them personally. I'm a big Teddy Bridgewater fan. I literally made a tweet earlier when I was like, it was a story about Teddy Bridgewater, and I just don't know how you hate the man. He's a great player, and I said he's an even greater man. And I think that I'm rooting for the Broncos this season. Let me know what you guys think of the Broncos' hot start. Do you think it's just because they played bad opponents, or do you think the Broncos are an actual contender this year for the playoffs or the Super Bowl? I don't think anyone besides Broncos fans thinks the Super Bowl. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And let me know what you guys want to hear about next, what you guys thought about this week 3 in the NFL, and other crazy stories that you guys want me to talk about. And enjoy the day.